Hello, hello, and welcome to Decaf, a podcast by the Beacon Center of Tennessee. Taylor and Mark are here, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm going to say that this episode is sponsored by beaconpoll.com. Visit beaconpoll.com for all your polling result needs. But really, I know I'm being cheesy like a regular podcast host, but we are so excited that today, the day that we're releasing this podcast, I'm just going to pretend like it's already Thursday, the day that we're recording this. Mark and I are probably by the time you're listening to this, we're working on like 2 to 3 hours of sleep for the whole week, but it's worth it because the poll is here. Y'all have heard us talk about it for so many months now. We put our heart and soul into getting a statewide poll. Tennessee voters, over 1,000 Tennessee registered voters. We polled them on some of the biggest issues today of policy, politics, culture, their opinions on how Tennessee's going. And we are so excited to release those today at beaconpoll.com. And we're just going to talk about that on this episode of Decaf. I know y'all are going to miss our hot takes and our fun topics of what we're going to do this weekend. I can give you a preview of what we're going to do this weekend. Mark is not going to show up on my recent calls list at all for the first time ever. My recent calls are Mark, my boyfriend, and my mom. Mark will not appear on that this weekend after this poll is released.
Gosh,
We're exhausted, but we're so happy. We have a little twinkle in our eyes because we can finally share with you guys what Tennessee's thinking. A little background on why we did this before we get into the results. There really isn't in Tennessee a consistent poll of where voters stand on issues, whether that issue is who they're going to vote for president or what they think about education or what they think about healthcare, what they think about the legislature. There isn't a consistent poll. And now there is. We saw a gap and we met the need, and the results are out in the world. Mark, how do you feel? I feel like your therapist right now. I felt like your therapist for a few weeks now, but how do you feel now that the world can know what we've been working on?
I'm excited. I'm excited to get it out. And just to kind of correct you a little bit, not really correct you, but there is one consistent poll, but it's just horrendous. And if you want a poll that's off by double digits every time, I think the last 3 elections, there is one for you. If you want a more accurate poll, that's what we're here for. So we're really, we're very excited. It's been a long time. I've really taken on this project, and you've basically taken on the entire website of this project. So we have been really, really, checking numbers, just had a lot on our plates last month. So I think I can kind of take an exhale, and I'm excited to do the interviews. Cause I think the results are so interesting. There's results that shocked me. There's results that were exactly what I expected. It was a really interesting poll. We asked some good I actually just got a text from a media person, I won't say who, and said, I loved your poll. You asked such a great wide range of questions, and I think it was such an interesting poll. So I am very excited about it. I can't wait.
You didn't tell me that. That's really exciting.
Like 3 minutes ago it happened, and the person texted me who's a big reporter and said, and not necessarily, there's no alignment or whatever. It was just, that was a great, interesting poll that asked a good wide ranging list of questions.
So let's just talk about the questions and the results then. The way that we've been breaking it down for internal purposes and now external purposes for you is in politics, policy, and culture. So we're just going to go at it that way. For political, we all know that there's an election that's a brewing. I feel like we're still all experiencing PTSD from the last presidential elections, and now one is upon us again. And we want to know where Tennesseans stand. I personally was shocked by some of the results. I know that you were too, Mark, but we asked questions like, if the election were held today, who would you vote for? Biden or DeSantis, Biden or Trump. If the primary election, if you're going to vote in a primary election, who are you going to vote for on the Democratic side and on the Republican side? I feel like the media wants us to think certain things are true. And we found that those things in some cases are true and in other cases are wildly false. So Mark, what were some of your takeaways on the political side of things?
What's some of the things that are true first? That unless something happens, the most likely scenario is that we have Joe Biden versus Donald Trump again. They are both winning their primaries by a lot. Joe Biden has 66%. Next in the Democratic primary is RFK Jr. with 8%. The one interesting tidbit, and this is the unexpected part of this, is that 22% of Democrats are still undecided. So that means there's a lot, and of course, Marianne Williamson has, her 2% of those
2%, I think it was. Yeah.
Yes. But it's the 22% is interesting because that might be people who expect potentially somebody else to get in, whether it's Gavin Newsom or somebody else. It kind of showing, hey, I'm not super happy with the choices I have. The Republican primary was a little surprising to me as well. The fact that Trump was winning by a lot doesn't surprise me. That he was winning by so much surprises me. He's at
that was surprising. Yeah,
61%. Ron DeSantis is second with 12%. So that's a 49-point swing.
It's huge.
In a race that was really supposed to be pretty close. And of course, there's a lot of time left. We don't know what can happen. But if you look at the way things moved, it was Trump up by a lot. And then DeSantis, before he announced, kind of had either taken the lead or was close. And now it's all Trump all the time. And I think that me and you had talked about this. It's a little surprising that, there's so many Republican candidates. Mike Pence kind of stamped out in the crowd at third place with 8%.
I know.
The rest of them all were good.
That was my most surprising. Yeah. I just wasn't aware. I guess maybe who I follow on Twitter isn't. And that's a whole nother point, is we live in the vacuum that we create for ourselves. And so in the vacuum that I've created for myself, I would say that Tim Scott would have been in third. But to see the poll of Tennessee voters is wildly different from the vacuum that I've created for myself. And that's why we poll, is to check our assumptions. And my assumption was that it would have been DeSantis, Trump, Scott. In reality, it's Trump, DeSantis, Pence. And that's just the vacuum that I've created for myself with the things that I'm reading. And I got my assumptions checked. Big time.
Yeah, you don't look at polling much. It was pretty clear to me that Trump was going to
get by. No, I don't look at polling.
Yeah, I thought Trump was going to get by at least. I thought about 25 or 30, but this is a substantial number. And kind of like what you said, the Mike Pence one was surprising, 8%. When everyone else was kind of around that 1% mark, you had Tim Scott, who just announced. Right. You had Nikki Haley. You had all the Vivek Ramaswamy. I mean, or Vivek. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, but they're all the 1% thing. So it's a 3-person race. And then going to the general election, it becomes interesting, especially when you talk about another number we'll go over with later. But Donald Trump leads Joe Biden by 21 points in a head-to-head. About what I expected. Trump won by 26 in 2016 against Hillary. He won by 23 in 2020 against Biden. So it's right around that, 21, 22, 23, pretty similar to what you have last time. The surprising part was Ron DeSantis fares substantially worse against Joe Biden than Donald Trump does. So he only beats Biden by 16, which is a 5-point swing in a general election is huge. And it's not what you think. It's not because, moderates are voting more for Donald Trump. It's not because Democrats are voting more for Donald Trump. It's because there's 9% of Republican voters said, I would vote for Donald Trump if he's the nominee. If he's not the nominee, I won't vote at all. It takes away a huge portion of his percentage. And, outside of this R poll, if this is a consistent in other states, it's going to be a real problem for the Republican Party if Donald Trump's not the nominee. Because, I think, you've heard about some of his issues. But if you have 9% of your base not voting at all, it's impossible to win a general election. So, I think that Tennessee's different in a lot of states. So I'm not going to, compare that. Our results actually look somewhat, I talked to Randy, our pollster, look pretty similar to what Kentucky results look like. But that was a real interesting thing because, I think that, common sense, or not even common sense, but a lot of people would say, well, DeSantis will fare better against Trump against Biden in a general election than Trump would. And that is true in some states. It is not true in Tennessee. Donald Trump is the strongest candidate that the Republicans can nominate according to polling right now. So that was a really interesting takeaway. And, most people view, obviously, Tennessee as a pretty red state. It's not necessarily something that, either side's going to go after. But the 5-point difference, I think, to me was actually pretty notable.
Yeah, and so let's kind of bleed politics into policy really quick by talking about approval of where Tennessee is as a state and how people think our legislature is doing. There was a lot of spiciness in this year's legislative session, and we are fresh off of it. This poll went out into the field early June, so there was about a month and a half between the end of the legislature, the announcement of a special session, and then when the poll went into the field. What did Tennesseans think of the approval of the legislature?
Yeah, so it was June 12th to 21st was when it was in the field.
Yeah.
So the legislature had an interesting, it's both sides can take away something from it. If you're on the Democratic side and you don't like the legislature, the thing you can take away from it that you would say, oh, this is good for us, is only 12% of Tennesseans strongly agree with what the legislature did. Or 12% only, strongly approve of the legislature. That's not a very high number for a state that's very Republican. Now, you want to take the Republican side of it, they can say, well, 30% of people approve of it. So when you add that up with the total approve, you get 42% of people totally approve of the legislature, while only 30% disapprove. So that's a plus 12, pretty decent. You got to be pretty happy with that. And there's a lot of people who are unsure. And like we see with the U.S. Congress, I'm sure it'd be a little bit different if you say, oh, do you like the U.S. House of Representatives? A lot of people would say no. But they ask, do you like your legislator? And a lot of people would say yes. So I think, Republicans are probably pretty happy saying 43-30 split of approval. That's a good number. Democrats are probably somewhat happy saying, well, 12% strongly approve of you. That's not a huge percentage. And that, maybe there's some room for us to make an inroad. So that was an interesting piece. And, when you look at not just that, but the what people think about the Tennessee government, that actually 53% of people think that the Tennessee government is a model for other states, while 40% disagree. So, that's an interesting thing too, because, a lot of places you see the opposite, but saying 53% of people, again, same issue as last time, say we want their other states to be run like that. But 40% is a pretty substantial group of people saying, no, we don't want it run like that.
No,
so
we
people
don't.
have very strong opinions on that, but overall, that gives both sides of the aisle something to feel good about.
100%. Well, this year in the legislature, one of the things that we kept our eye on the most and worked really hard on was school choice. And there were some wins and there were some L's with that. But that was one of the big issues that we polled this month. Again, checking our assumptions and seeing if this thing that Beacon has fought for, which is school choice, is popular among voters. Should the legislature take notice of this popularity among voters, or are we way off in thinking that this is important? I'll just give you a little preview, is that we're not way off. Mark, talk about some of those education numbers, because truly that was what I was most hopeful about. No one who listens to this podcast will be surprised to hear me say that education is my most important issue. I was most excited about that. I was nervous about it. When you check your assumptions and you don't know if you're right or not, you get nervous. And so that was what I was most nervous about, is this thing that I care so much about actually popular? Do people actually want it? Or am I just way off fighting for something that no one cares about? I'm fighting for something that 69% of Tennesseans care about. Mark, talk about those ESA, charter school, and school choice numbers with us.
Well, let me say on education, I was way off. I am shocked. I am absolutely shocked by the amount of people, especially in Democratic circles, who want educational choice of some kind. It was astonishing. Of course, it was the other way. And I knew it was going to be popular. I mean, I've seen other polls. It's across the board popular. And we've said this, I've talked about this, that you are now a fringe member of the state of Tennessee if you are not for educational choice. So kind of go through the first numbers. The first question we asked was, your approval of public education in the state. 56% of people are dissatisfied. Only 36% of people are satisfied with the public education in the state. That's a minus 20. And shockingly, among Democrats, more people were dissatisfied with the public education than satisfied. It's 49-48, very close, but that is a shocking number.
Still.
And then
edge.
When you go down, the education savings account, which is what we have pushed for forever, it's school choice, and we explain what the program was. So we said, hey, because it's important that we explain what that is, because otherwise you might have people saying...
Read the question, Mark. Read the question and tell people what we said.
Sure. Under Tennessee's existing education savings account program, families of K-12 students can use a portion of their per pupil funding on certain educational expenses, such as private school tuition, tutoring, educational therapy, or other educational purposes. This program already exists in some counties. Would you support or oppose expanding this program to all counties? Like you said, 69% approval. More importantly, 17% disapproval. That is a plus 52 for those people out there who don't do math quickly, which is just astonishing for any issue anywhere.
I've never seen an issue get so riled up in the legislature and be so close, and then go to the public and it's overwhelmingly supported. I mean, you keep making this point, and I keep making it. I haven't talked to anybody about these poll results aside from my mom and my boyfriend, but your comment that being anti-school choice in Tennessee in 2023 is a fringe position. Only 17% of Tennesseans don't think ESA should be expanded statewide. That's like no one. I mean, it is someone, but it's like not, I mean, it's less than 1 in 5 people.
But when you're taught, I mean, you're right. And the thing is that that's not even as fringe. I mean, there's another one that makes you even more fringe when we asked generally about educational choice. So we asked whether you agree that more public and private educational options are needed in K-12 education. 77% agree, 9% disagree. That is under 10% of people do not think we need more private and public educational options. So, I mean, it's to the point now, this is taking over. And they always say that politicians are a lagging indicator to the public. We'll find out next session if that's the case, because this is these results are really something that people are not happy with education and they want more options. And we talk about charter schools too, super popular among all demographics.
So popular.
I mean, so that one is and if you want to talk about, it's popular among every demographic. Republicans 65 approve, 20% disapprove. Dems 59 approve, 32% disapprove. Independents 69% approve, 16% disapprove.
And I think that's one of the interesting things. And if you go to beacontn.org and click on the big picture on our website that takes you to our poll data, you can go to the bottom and see all these party regional crosstabs. If you go to beaconpoll.com, you can see it on view full poll results. We have these party region crosstabs. We have every single thing out there for you guys to see because we want to be transparent with you. Some of the things, there was one result that I was like, crap, I don't like this result, which we could talk about in a few minutes. Doesn't mean that I don't want everyone to see it. We want you guys to see every single result that we have because we don't want to feel like we're speaking into a vacuum. We don't want you to feel like you're speaking into a vacuum. We want to know where Tennesseans stand generally, and we want you guys to know it too. So all of that's up there. But on these education numbers, I have watched so much legislative testimony. I've heard so many people talk about, and we've said it before too, that school choice in education used to be something that was universally popular no matter what your political party was. In recent years, it's become something that only some Republicans support. But when you look at the people in Tennessee, which is who legislators and lawmakers are serving and representing, when you look at the people in Tennessee, the people want this. And I think that that's just a huge point that needs to continue to be made, is that people want better choices, more choices for their kids. This isn't just something that we've made up in our heads as this would be cool. This is something that people actually want, and the numbers show it, and the numbers don't lie.
And let me say one more thing, too, because I think it's important to note, and you talked about the transparency issue, and I believe that's so important. We'll be honest, Beacon, of course, wants educational choice. We've worked on it forever. We've done it for a long time. But it's really important that everything is transparent, and you look at the crosstabs. We were going to release this no matter what it said. It could have been 80% against. That we're releasing the poll to show what Tennesseans think. You can look at the question. You look at the demographics. You look at the rest of the information, which is very consistent with the state. There's nothing, of course, we're happy to see this result, but there is no question about the legitimacy of it. You can look through all of it, and you can see the way the question is worded. Unlike some other polling outlets that for a long time didn't even put their questions in terms that you can see everything. And, there, like we said, I think when you look at this, there's a little bit for everyone. Like, no matter where you're at politically, you're going to find some things you like, some things you don't like. And, I think it's a real message in my mind to some Democrats to say, hey, most of your people want ESAs by a 63 to 28 margin. They want education savings account across the state of Tennessee. So, it's kind of an example of, you talked about this before, but Twitter's not real life. The people who talk about this are not real life. And sometimes legislators don't really represent their districts. And this is a really interesting kind of case study in that to see, wow, now we know how popular this is in the state. And it was explained. It was as clear as day. The question was perfectly worded where anybody would agree it was a good question. And there's the result. So it's nothing to do with us and what we believe. A lot of these, I think that's the only thing in our poll that we've taken a position on. All the other ones are just questions. So it's just a really interesting result.
Yeah, I had one of those moments the night before the poll came out of the field where I was like laying in my bed looking at the ceiling and having an existential crisis in my own mind of what if Tennesseans don't want school choice. I was just thinking like we're going to publish this. I'm probably going to cry as I hit the button and then fully spiral and need to be committed. But we're going to release it anyway because we want people to know and we want to know. Boy, oh boy, was I happy to see those numbers. I've been having existential crises for a ton of other reasons now, and not because of this. So we'll take
trying
it.
to get our graphics done is why we're having existential crisis, right?
Trying to get all of the visuals nice and pretty for you guys to look at has been giving me an existential crisis, and my therapist is going to get a panic call probably as we release this thing. But that's showbiz, baby. Speaking of showbiz, let's talk about cultural things really quick before we sign off and leave y'all to go dig into beaconpoll.com on your own. The result that I was so devastated about is, okay, let me just say, there are only a couple people in our office that have TikTok. We're not content creators. I'm not going to rat out who else it is. We're not creators. We're watchers. I am a TikTok watcher. How many people in Tennessee want 56% of Tennesseans?
Want it banned. And every single type of person too. Democrats, Republicans, Independent, all three of them want it banned. And now is the most apparent for Republicans is a plus 42, but Dems plus 16, Independents plus 31, all want it banned, 56 to 25. That's a plus 31. And, you know, I don't care about TikTok. I don't even have an opinion on this, to be honest with you. I don't know what the answer is, but it was that was a trouncing of a result that somebody like Taylor who does like TikTok probably not happy about.
No, well, Justin and I had a running joke that if Tennesseans want TikTok banned, then he's going to ban it for me. I'm still sneaking through with the TikTok on my phone, and next time I cook for our whole team, I'll make sure it's a recipe that I found on TikTok so that everybody can forgive me. But yeah, 56% of Tennesseans believe that TikTok should be banned. One of the other interesting questions that Mark and I liked, and I knew the poll results, we're recording this on July 5th. I knew the poll results yesterday on July 4th. And so I had a Bud Light to celebrate with a Bud Light question poll results. Mark, this is something that you and I care way too much about. And I was very pleased with this result. Talk us through how we structured our Bud Light approval question and what the results said.
To be clear, you weren't pleased with the result. You just like the way we structured the question. Obviously, we don't have an opinion on any of the Bud Light stuff. We just like to drink it.
Yes, I love drinking it.
Yeah. So I think that one of the issues of the Bud Light question is you have a lot of people who have an opinion on it that may or may not drink Bud Light. So we structured in a way that you first had to answer the question if you've drank Bud Light before. And you can't answer whether you're actually boycotted it unless you have actually drank it at some point. And with that being said, the number of people who have boycotted Bud Light in Tennessee is pretty substantial. 22% of people who have drank Bud Light previously have chosen to stop drinking because of their recent marketing campaign. Not because of the taste. Again, the taste is good. I will go to my grave saying that.
The taste is great.
Argue about all the other stuff. I will defend, me and you will defend the taste of Bud Light to the end of the moon.
All day.
But 22% of people who drank Bud Light had stopped drinking it because of the recent marketing campaign with TikTok influencer Dylan Mulvaney. And it is a substantial number, and it actually tracks really closely with the market share that Bud Light's lost. It's about 25%. So it's a real, I think it was pretty clear it's a problem for Bud Light, but this is a real problem for Bud Light. And it's a huge percentage of people, and about half of the people who surveyed drank it to begin with. So they already had, 50% who aren't drinking it regardless. And you're losing another 22% of that population. It's a bad number for them. And when you look at the breakdown, only 2% of Democrats have stopped drinking it, but 36% of Republicans, which as we know, make up most of the state, a higher percentage of the state than anyone else, have stopped drinking it. It's a problem for them. It is not, I think you kind of have these two sides, and I think this number shows us that this side of, maybe more people on the left, like, oh, it's not a big deal. It'll fade. It's not as big as a deal as people are talking about. It is 22% substantial. That's a crap ton of money that they are losing.
Yeah. When I said I was pleased with the result, I more meant that I was pleased with the fact that it very accurately reflected what the market said. And that's how, when we're looking at polling results and we can measure them up against something else, it's like, it just makes it such a clear picture in your head of their sales have fallen. And then when people are asked the question, they answer it in line with how they buy. People reflect their opinions with what they purchase. And so that's what I meant. I mean, I love my precious Bud Light. I will drink it till the day I die. I'm not pleased that 22% of Tennesseans have given it up, but I am pleased to know that the way that Tennesseans are polling actually does reflect the market value of what's going on with Bud Light right now. But we also talked about, this was interesting to me too, boycotting in general. That was something that Mark and I always talk about. We're no stranger to that topic here on the podcast. Boycotting. Is it just a Republican thing? Is it just a Democrat thing? Is it an older person thing? Is it a younger person thing? Whose thing is boycotting, Mark?
Everyone's, apparently. So what we asked about boycotting, and it turns out that 56% of Tennesseans have chosen not to buy a product because a company's values conflicted with their own beliefs, including a majority of both Republicans and Democrats. So over 50% of both, they just are boycotting different things. And when you kind of go down to the other level, one interesting fact I put is that 64% of Democrats believe that companies should take a stand on important political issues. 64% believe it. That's a huge number.
It's a big number.
And 41% of Republicans also believe that companies should take an important stand on an issue, which actually kind of surprised me. I thought they were going to say stay out of politics, that's kind of thing, but that's not how a lot of people feel. So this is I think Bud Light is the boycott of the moment, but over the past years, Democrats and Republicans have both boycotted things. We have a Chick-fil-A boycott from years ago from the Democrats. Target from Republicans. Yeah. So there's a lot of things. And it turns out that, over 50% of people feel like boycotting is acceptable and something they should do. And people feel like if a product doesn't, align with them, and guess what? That's capitalism. Me and you might not be as into boycotts as other people are personally, but it's capitalism, and it's a way to do something without having the government shut something down. You can choose what you buy. That's part of being in a free society. And for whatever reason you want, you don't have to give a reason for it. But it's an interesting tidbit. And, I think that it's a media narrative that the Republicans have boycotted, but Democrats have been doing this for a lot longer. It seems like the Republicans have just started to do it. And the outside of anybody's opinions, the Bud Light boycott has been an extremely successful boycott from the right. We also asked the question, I don't actually have the results right on hand, but whether people who did boycott Bud Light would ever drink it again. I don't remember the exact results, but I remember most of them said they will never drink Bud Light again. I think only like 10% or 15% said they were open to drinking it again.
It was a big result of those who said they would never drink it again, which, again, as we just talked about, 22% stopped. Bud Light's value went way down. If those people don't drink it again, what's going to happen to them? No more fun medieval dilly commercials or what's up commercials. They can't afford that anymore. It just is interesting. I showed my support of Bud Light and its beautiful taste yesterday on the 4th of July, but 22% of Tennesseans who would have maybe had it last 4th of July didn't have it this 4th of July, and the numbers are going to show that. So,
and that's something we talk about too. It's like, it doesn't matter what we believe on this. It's just about, and Beacon has no position on these. The only thing we worked on the essays, it's just to find out where people are. And I think the Bud Light question, even within our staff, we have a difference of opinions for sure in it. But it's
100%.
It's really interesting to see that it's certainly not just a made up, right-wing media saying it. It is clearly happening. It's clearly costing them money. And they have to, from put on my PR hat, they have to figure out a way to right the ship and figure this out, because otherwise they've already gone from number 1 to number 2 beer, I think. And based on these results, it could keep falling. So it'll be interesting, but it's interesting, and the national media might take it away. And I do want to bring up 2 other points. I think, we talked about that the left is probably going to be happy with. The first one was the national news of the Justin Jones, Justin Pearson expulsion.
Yeah, this was so interesting.
Yeah, the 2 people, the 2 representatives from Tennessee who got expelled from the legislature for essentially breaking House rules when they were protesting gun control. And the interesting number is that there is no majority. It is a 50-50 split. There is no majority,
y'all.
39% of Tennesseans believe they should have been expelled. 39% of Tennesseans believe they should not have been expelled, while 17% are neutral. And, when you say 50-50, you say, okay, that's interesting. It's right down the middle. When you look at Tennessee's demographics, That's not a great number for Republicans because you say, you have Trump up by 21 points, but meanwhile, this very hotly contested political issue is an absolute 50-50 split. It makes you kind of realize that, I think that that's something where if you're a Democrat, you're saying that's good for us. And if you're a Republican, like that's not great. It's 50-50 because we want it in a state that's, 21 points Republican in this election. You want that to be different. And the other result that I think this was the most shocking, especially looking at the other numbers that I think Democrats will be really, really happy about is the Trump indictment numbers. So we asked people whether
that was wild too.
Yeah, whether they believe Trump should be indicted in the classified documents case. And this was, probably the weekend after it happened. So not all the information was out, still not all out yet. 44% of people believe that Trump should not be indicted. 43% of people said he should be indicted. So, I mean, that's 87%. You have another 13 that basically were neutral, wanted to wait for more information. But it's really interesting to kind of to put that on to say that, we believe 50-50 Trump should be indicted. And then meanwhile, Trump's up by 21 points, which means there is a substantial number of people, and I'm assuming that's kind of the 39% that don't vote for him in the primary, said, I think Trump should be indicted, but I'm going to vote for him anyway over Biden. And we kind of talked to Randy, our pollster, about that. And the most likely case in that is saying, you know what, I don't really care for Trump, but he is the lesser of two evils. And no matter whether I think he should be indicted or not, that against Joe Biden, I still view him as the better option. So I really thought it was going to be about 60-30 people who thought he should not be indicted, just kind of based on, the news we hear from right-wing media.
Right.
But the fact is people think he should be indicted and people are going to vote for him over Biden anyway. And, I think there's I think there's that kind of, people might think there's a double standard, with what Hunter Biden's experiencing and that maybe he should, also be indicted. So there's a lot to unpack there. But again, that's another number that Democrats are going to look at and say, well, that's good for us. There's a lot of people who think he should be indicted. What's not good for them is the actual election results. So it's a really, like we said, it's a mixed bag. No matter where you're at, you can find something you like politically, you can find something you don't like.
I know. And I think just to go back to the accuracy of this poll and, based on how it really is versus what we're hearing all around constantly, our poll results match up so closely. When we look at the presidential polling results and the data of where Tennesseans stand, our results for this year match up so closely with what happened in 2020, the population that we were able to measure, how they responded, going back to the Bud Light question, approval versus the numbers. You're looking at these indicators throughout our poll of how it matches up with other data that we have from other sources. And it's accurate, you guys. Like, other polls that Mark is referencing in a very veiled and shady way don't actually match up with what has happened historically. But when you look at our numbers and you compare them, our pollster Randy put a little side by side of what people are saying now versus what actually happened in the 2020 election, for example, we're matching up with that. We're getting a very good gauge on what Tennesseans think, a very accurate gauge, because these people are answering a poll anonymously. They don't have to hide anything. They can go on Twitter and say one thing, but then share what they actually believe on a poll. And that's why I think polling is so important, because people are able to do this without their name getting out there and answer these things honestly. And they're matching up with data that we're getting from other sources. And that to me is one of the most exciting things about polling. And that's why I'm so glad we're doing this.
Yeah, just to explain kind of what Taylor's saying too, it's not anonymous in the way that, you have to match up them with their voter data. So Randy knows who they are.
Yes.
We just don't have names. We don't have, it's not,
But you don't know who they are.
That's right. But in order to actually make sure it's an effective poll, it's got to match up with registered voter data. But I think Taylor's point is exactly right. And it's a great example. And one of the things that Randy does that a lot of pollsters don't do is that, he doesn't just weight results by the last two general elections. That's kind of what some people do. He does it by demographics, party, geography, behavioral measures. He uses a service that really matches up exactly with what the state of Tennessee looks like. And they're weighted accordingly. So, while some polls have, Phil Bredesen beating Marsha Blackburn 2 weeks before the election, or Trump only up by 9 when he wins by 23. So there's some polls that do that, and they just don't exactly represent the sample size of what the state of Tennessee looked like. It just kind of represents seemingly just a random sample of people, quite honestly, that has a very far left leaning. But what we do is we really do match it up with the state. And, we're not a political organization. We don't care what the results say. Everyone has personal opinions on our staff. But from an organizational standpoint, it doesn't matter if Biden's winning or Trump's winning or how much they're winning by. We just want results that show what the state looks like. And we got them. I couldn't be more happy with it. I'm really excited. There's some great questions, some interesting questions. And we only kind of hit the surface. So, Taylor, tell people kind of how they can look at it, the things they can find. I know that you designed pretty much the entire website. So, I mean, talk to me about that.
Yeah, so we're going to shut up now, and we're going to let you guys go to beaconpoll.com. Close Facebook. You're done with Facebook for today. Go to beaconpoll.com and scroll through those results. When you scroll down, you'll see some of our biggest takeaways, the 6 things that we thought were so mind-blowing on this thing. As you scroll, you'll see political results that you can see the results of a Republican primary, a Democrat primary, and a general election if it was held today. You scroll down a little bit and you'll see some education numbers about how many people approve of ESA's charters and school choice generally. Scroll down a little more, you'll see TikTok and Bud Light numbers. Scroll down a little more and you'll see our methodology because, again, we are being transparent. And on every single slide on this website, we have interactive polling data where you can go through, I can go through and check a box that says women, in my age range and what they thought, because that to me is interesting to see how I stand with people who are similar to me. You can interact with that data. You can go to the next little button and see how people in Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee, East Tennessee, wherever you live, polled on certain issues. It is as transparent as it can possibly be. So I'm going to say it again, and then I'm going to shut up and let you go explore the website yourself. Go to beaconpoll.com, explore the data, and tell us what you think, because we want to know. Mark, you got anything else for these lovely people on this lovely day?
I did not enjoy the poll. And ask us questions. There's a lot of stats that you might not quite understand if you're like, oh, this doesn't really match up with previous elections or something. We know it all. I have spent so much time trying to figure out all these all the transparent parts of this. And some things might not look like it matches up on the surface, but it does if you kind of look a little bit deeper. So any questions you have about any questions we have, any results, please ask us. I feel like, I'm not Randy. I'll never be Randy. And also we need to give a shout out to Targa's Market Research. They're the ones who did the poll. Randy did an excellent job,
so good.
About as down the middle as possible. Doesn't work for political campaigns, doesn't work for parties. He's just a person who just wants good results. So shout out to Randy, and we love you. And again, thanks to everyone. Thanks to Olivia, our intern, who did a lot of fact checking for us. Thanks to Dylum, who's our new employee who checked numbers a million times. We did so much stuff. We put our numbers so many places. We had to make sure they're all right. And of course, last but not least, thank you to Taylor for putting together a really cool website. She designed those graphics herself on, this cool website that we haven't figured out how to use. I haven't figured out how to use yet. And Taylor did all of that herself. That was not a graphic designer who did that. So great job to Taylor as well.
Thanks, Mark. This has been a labor of love and an exercise in teamwork and being patient with each other. Mark and I are probably going to need some type of work couples counseling after this because we have been butting heads and trying to figure out how to make this work. But we did it. It works, and it's out there for you guys to see and enjoy and ask us questions about. And by us, I mean Mark, because he's way better at numbers than I am. So ask him all of your burning questions. We want to hear them. But visit beaconpoll.com, explore the results, and tell us what you think. Thanks for listening to Decaf. If this is your first time listening or you haven't subscribed yet, you should on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, go to beaconpoll.com, spend your weekend on it, and let us know what you think. Talk to you soon.